Hello and welcome. It is I, Brett Sieber, naturalist of the Three Rivers Park District, located at the Lowry Nature Center in the home state of the one and only Paul Bunyan and his big blue ox babe. That's right, Minnesota. Today, partnering once again with my friends at Tierney to bring you a lesson on something that I know each and every one of you have been accused of bringing into your house at one point in time or another. You'll be up in your room reading a book, nice and quiet, and then you hear from downstairs, "Who brought this mess in here? Who made this dirty, dirty mess?" Dirt. Well, soil. When it's outside, it's soil, but the moment it's on your shoes, under your fingernails, or on your clothes, it is dirt. And nobody likes dirt, but let's be honest, without soil, we as humans can't be here on the planet. Today, we're going to dig deep into the world of soil and talk about what makes soil, put together a soil recipe, if you will. We're going to meet an animal that spends most of its life in the soil. We're even going to go out into your yard and perform 4 very highly scientific tests to determine what kind of soil you have in your yard. All I got to say now is who's ready to get dirty? Or is it soily? You know what? It doesn't matter. Let's get started. All right, so if we wanted to make soil, we could follow a recipe and we could have all these things. You're like, well, Mr. Brett, I used a recipe before to make chocolate chip cookies. You're like, well, we had flour and sugar and butter and chocolate chips and we mixed it all together and we came up with something that was amazing to eat. Soil is not something you should eat. However, there still is a recipe. Number 1 on our recipe, rocks. Big rocks that over time get broken down into teeny tiny smaller rocks like pebbles that get broken down to even smaller teeny tiny rocks like sand. Those rocks create air spaces in the soil, and air is so important in the soil, especially for next on the list, the animals. There are so many animals that call the soil home. Animals like worms and insects, even small mammals like voles and moles that live in the soil. Along with animals, we also have plants. Plants grow almost exclusively in the soil. Sure, there are plants that grow in the water without soil, but so many plants, including, oh, by the way, the plants we rely on as food, without soil, it doesn't work. And the plants, the part that we can't see under the ground, the roots, they help hold the soil in place, which is super important. Now, also in the soil, which is important to the plants, is water. That water that's in there, the plants are going to draw up. They're going to use that to make food. And while they're making food, of course, they're also making air. Round of applause for the plants. Thank you very much, because we can't live without it, along with water. And speaking of, air is also in the water. Now, here I have a water droplet and then the scientific abbreviation, H2O. Stands for water. Here, I could have just left it blank and said, do you see the air? And you're like, well, no, because we can't see air. Exactly. However, oxygen, the air you breathe, and carbon dioxide, CO2, the air you breathe out, both can be found and are important for soil. And lastly, dead stuff. That's right, the dead stuff. Dead stuff, dead plants, dead animals that are slowly being eaten by the animals, that are slowly being broken down by things like mushrooms, where that is the fancy word here, organic material. That dead stuff being turned into organic material that will be used by the plants. Each one of these a vital part of the soil recipe, from the air, the water, the plants, the animals, the rocks, and all that organic material, that dead stuff. Mix it all together and we get soil. All right, so this is an American toad, and it spent a lot of its life in the soil. Sure, as an amphibian, it has to go down to the pond to lay eggs, but the rest of the year, it's on land, and mostly in the forest. You can find this toad throughout Minnesota, but it loves the forest and it loves the soil because, one, it can find food there. Remember those other animals living in the soil in our soil recipe? The worms and the insects, she loves to eat them. Plus, it's a place for her to hide and stay safe. Now, she's not perfectly safe there because, sure, just because you can't see something doesn't mean you can't find it. What else could an animal use, a predator use to find her, if not their eyes? How about their nose? Sniffing, smelling, maybe listening. If an animal does happen to find her, they'll pick her up and try to eat her. But this is where it gets amazing. Sure, she doesn't have teeth, she doesn't have claws, she's not really fast, she doesn't make loud noises. From what I know, she doesn't know karate. However, she's not completely defenseless. These big bumps on the back of her head right here have this nasty, stinky, smelly ooze when an animal picks her up to eat her. Remember, most animals don't have these magical things called thumbs, so they use their mouth, and that ooze comes out, it covers her back, it makes her taste terrible, and they spit her out. Now, some animals don't have a really great sense of taste. That's okay, because she's got a surprise for them. Now, I'm not talking to where she jumps up behind a log in the forest and goes, boo! No, not that kind of surprise. However, a surprise that comes out right back there. Again, remember, well, how did they pick her up? Did they use their hands? No, they use their mouth, so that surprise goes in their mouth. Spits her back out, crawls away, lives to see another day. The soil for her is a place to find food, is a place to hide, and in the winter when she's brumating, which is a little bit different than hibernating, she digs down deep in the soil of the forest below where it's going to freeze, and that's where she stays. So soil to the American toad is an amazingly important thing. All right, so we're outside now. Now, in your yard, let's be clear, soil's kind of everywhere. I mean, it's underneath your grass, it's underneath the cement, your driveway, under your house. You got to find a place where it's easy to get to. Now, I want you to be asking your parents first. You can't just be going out into your yard with a shovel and digging a hole to check for soil. Find a place where you can get it. We're out actually by my garden, and we're going to determine what kind of soil we have in my garden. Now, remember, 4 highly scientific tests. You got to first get your soil sample in your hand, and you start looking around. You're like, oh, wait, there's rocks in there like we talked about. There's some old dead plant stuff like we talked about. In order to determine the types of soil that are in here, though, I have 4 tests for you. Highly scientific. They are as follows: the sparkle, the scritch, the squish, and the sniff. And you're like, Mr. Brett, let's be real honest. Those don't sound highly scientific at all. Well, I just ask you to wait just for a moment and watch and see. First couple tests, we're testing for sand. We know that sand is important in the soil because it creates air spaces. Now, sand doesn't like water. Can you think of a place where the only type of soil is sand? Sometimes it's hot there, sometimes it's cold. The desert, right, the desert. Do a lot of plants grow in the desert? No, because sand doesn't like water. However, it does help to have a little bit of it. To test for it, we have the sparkle test. You hold that soil out and you kind of look and see, and does the sunlight shining down make some of that soil glitter and sparkle? And you're like, well, Mr. Brett, the sun's not out today. That's okay. We have a secondary test for sand. We have the scritch test. Take a pinch between your fingers, roll it around up by your ear, and if you hear that scritchy, scratchy sound, it tells you you have sand in your soil. All right, those are the first 2 tests. The next test is the squish test. You just take your soil, and just as it sounds, you squish it. And sometimes it helps to make an angry face go, and you squish it, and when you open your hand, and it holds together, that tells us there is silt in your soil. Silt is a teeny tiny particle, way smaller than sand. Sand hates water, silt loves water, so much so that it doesn't want to let it go. It's a lot like clay. You may have worked with clay in your art class. All silt in the soil isn't going to share water, and if water's not being shared, we can't have plants growing. Not going to work. A little bit of silt, though, holds on to some of that water, makes your soil better. The last test, you remember, was the sparkle, the scritch, the squish. What was the last one? The sniff test. Take your soil and you're like, Mr. Brett, that really just smells like dirt or soil or the earth. Right, because that's what it is. But that soily, that dirty, that earthy smell is the organic material that has been broken down by the animals that are in here, returning those nutrients to the soil so the plants can use them so they can grow again. All 3 of those, sand, silt, and organic material, super important to make a nice, healthy soil. It's actually why I have it here in my garden. Your turn. Find some soil, do the test, figure out what kind of soil you have in your yard. Well, thanks again for joining me today, spending time with me as we explored the world of soil. I hope you came in and your hands were all sorts of soily. Remember, not so much dirt. It's a highly scientific thing. If you are looking for more about the Three Rivers Park District, you can visit our website. If you're looking for more content to go along with the lesson today, you can visit Tierney's website. My name is Brett Sieber. Until we see each other again, get outside.